You wake before the sun ever bothers with Rome. Not because you are disciplined, but because the neighbor's baby is screaming through a wall as thin as a senator's promises. Somewhere in the dark above you, someone kicks over a chamber pot. You hear the splash in the alley below before you smell it. Picture a crooked canyon of brick and timber. Our Insula, a 6-story apartment block leaning over the street like it's already tired of standing. Laundry hangs in gray stripes between windows. Smoke from last night's cook fires clings to the walls. The street is barely wide enough for a cart, but somehow wide enough for all the noise in the empire. If you glance at a map of Rome, this building is just a tiny rectangle in the crowded Subura district, wedged between a tavern, a shrine, and a shop that smells permanently of fish. Down in the street, a stray dog noses at a discarded cabbage leaf, a fruit seller arranges bruised figs, and 2 boys play a game with knucklebones beside a trickle of sewage. Our guide today is Gaius, a linen seller's assistant and professional rent payer. He lies on a straw mattress he shares with his wife and their son, staring at the cracked ceiling. He hates this place, but he fears losing it more. If the floor holds one more year, he thinks, so will we. His deepest wish is embarrassingly modest, a room where the roof does not drip directly onto the bed. Listen for the building waking up around him. Footsteps overhead, a shout for water, the slosh of a bucket hauled up by rope, a quarrel in the courtyard as someone accuses someone else of stealing last night's bread. The Insula is alive long before the Forum yawns and stretches, and Gaius feels both comforted and trapped by its constant heartbeat. You and we are going to spend one entire Roman day inside this high-rise beehive. We'll climb its stairs, count its cracks, dodge its leaks, and try not to annoy its landlord. Gaius doesn't know it yet, but today his careful balance between survival and disaster will tilt. Because in a city of marble monuments and glorious generals, the most fragile thing is not a statue or a treaty. It's Gaius's lease, and by nightfall, you'll see why the Insula is both his shelter and his trap. Let's bring up an image of the Insula in daylight. The facade is a patchwork of plaster and exposed brick, streaked with soot. Wooden balconies jut out like splintered shelves. On the ground floor, sturdy stone and thick walls. Higher up, cheaper brick and timber, as if the builder's courage and budget both ran out as they climbed. Gaius's family lives on the 4th floor. Not the worst level, not the best. Below them, richer tenants enjoy rooms with thicker walls and a slightly lower chance of sudden death by collapse. Above them, the truly desperate sleep under warped beams, listening for the creak that means everything is about to become sky. Inside Gaius's single room, the air is already warm and close. A tiny clay lamp smolders on a niche, throwing orange light across the rough plaster. A basket of onions hangs from a peg to keep the rats guessing. The family's entire world is here. A low table, 3 stools, a chest with their clothing, and the mattress that pretends to be both bed and sofa. As his wife, Livia, folds up the bedding, Gaius tightens his belt and his resolve. If I can keep the rent paid, he thinks, the boy won't have to grow up in the attic flats. His ambition isn't to rise in society. It's to avoid rising up another flight of stairs and the shame of admitting they've slid further down the ladder. Out in the stairwell, you can almost feel the building breathing. Cool, damp stone at the bottom, dusty dryness rising with each step. Neighbors pass with baskets and water jugs, nodding without quite smiling. Everyone calculates the same unspoken equation: how long their money will hold out against the landlord's patience and the city's indifference. By mid-morning, Gaius must be at the shop. But before that, there's a small daily pilgrimage that keeps the Insula alive and, ironically, always on the edge of disaster. To understand his day, we have to follow him down those groaning stairs and into the courtyard, where water, gossip, and risk all pool together. Step into the courtyard, a crooked rectangle of light dropped into the middle of the Insula. Picture damaged plaster, creeping mildew, and laundry lines crisscrossing overhead like a spiderweb spun by a very tired spider. In the center stands a cracked cistern rim, its stone worn smooth by 1,000 anxious hands. The real water, of course, comes from the street fountain. A boy returns now with 2 brimming buckets hanging from a yoke across his shoulders, water sloshing against wood. His bare feet slap the paving stones. Somewhere above, an old woman leans out and shouts for him to hurry. Her voice echoes off the walls like a crow trapped in a jar. Gaius takes his turn at the rope. A neighbor above lowers a clay jar on a frayed cord, and he carefully fills it, watching the jar sway as it rises toward a balcony. If that rope snaps, he thinks, so does our peace with the people upstairs. In a building this packed, one broken pot can start a war, and he has no spare coins for apologies. Breathe in the air down here. Wet stone, stale frying oil drifting from a ground-floor cookshop, the metallic tang of the public latrine around the corner. A baker on the first floor leans in his doorway, dusted in flour, eyeing every tenant who passes. His oven is both a blessing, warmth in winter, and a constant threat of fire in a neighborhood built like kindling. Near the entrance, a man in a clean tunic and scuffed but expensive sandals stands with arms folded. His hair is oiled, his wax tablet neatly tucked at his side. This is Felix, the landlord's agent, a man whose smile measures arrears. He surveys the balconies like a general studying enemy walls, already working out who can be squeezed and who can be replaced. Gaius's secret calculation runs behind his eyes. Water carried, fuel used, favors owed to whom. Every shared bucket and borrowed ember is another tiny thread in the net that might save him if rent day goes wrong. As he shoulders his own jar and starts back toward the stairs, he feels Felix's gaze pause on him for just a moment longer than on the others. It's the landlord's agent, and he didn't come this early just for the scenery. Follow Gaius into the stairwell, that vertical street where everyone's lives stack on top of each other. The steps are uneven, worn into shallow bowls by decades of sandals. A thin shaft of light leaks down from somewhere above, dim and dusty, like a god's attention that got lost on the way to the forum. On the first landing, a door stands open. Inside, a family eats breakfast around a proper table, their room larger, with a tiny painted fresco of vines curling around a doorway. The smell of hot porridge wafts out and curls into the stairwell, making Gaius's stomach complain. He counts the bowls on their table automatically, imagining how much rent those bowls represent. Higher up, the plaster grows more cracked, the floors more springy. You can feel the timber under your feet flex ever so slightly, like a ship's deck in a storm. A child darts past with a crust of bread, chased by a wiry woman wielding a sandal. Somewhere, a couple argues behind a door about a missing oil lamp. Their words seep into the stairwell as surely as the cooking smoke and the occasional burst of laughter. If you freeze this scene as a still image, you'd see layers of Rome at once. A fishmonger's basket on the ground floor, a scribbled love charm on the wall midway up, a birdcage hanging from a high-floor window. It's a social X-ray, and every step is a rung on an invisible ladder that most people will never truly climb. At the fourth floor, Gaius pauses to catch his breath and listen. A rumor has been climbing faster than he has. Talk that the building's owner plans to sell the Insula to a new investor, one rumored to be less patient, more ambitious, and particularly fond of raising rents. Gaius presses his palm against the cool wall, feeling the faint vibration of footsteps, voices, daily anxiety. If they raise it even a little, he tells himself, I'll have to choose between food and walls. And as he pushes open his own door, he has no idea that this rumor will stop being just stairwell gossip before the sun goes down. Inside the room, morning is a choreography of small efficiencies. Picture Livia squatting by a little charcoal brazier set near the window, coaxing a blue-orange flame from last night's ash. The smoke snakes out toward the alley, joining 100 other thin plumes. A flat loaf warms on a cracked terracotta tile. The smell is humble but comforting, a kind of edible courage. Their son, Marcus, sits cross-legged on the floor, scratching gladiators into the dust with a splinter of wood. One day I'll see the arena, he mutters. Gaius hears him and feels a jab of guilt. One day, he thinks, I'll give him a view that isn't just the wall of the building across the alley. His ambitions line up like unpaid bills, modest and relentless. Space is precious here, and every object has at least two jobs. The chest is a table, the stools are steps to reach the high shelf. The shelf is also, unofficially, a mouse highway. A small amphora of oil stands in the coolest corner, wrapped in damp cloth. Livia's trick to keep it from turning, one of many quiet Insula life hacks that keep disaster one step back. Even the cracked jug in the corner has a role, catching drips from the ceiling when it rains. From the window, you can look straight into the neighbors' lives. A man shaving by reflective bronze, a woman picking lice from a child's hair, a pair of lovers whispering in a doorway they optimistically call private. No one here really closes their doors, they just angle them, pretending not to listen while hearing everything. A knock interrupts the fragile routine, not the friendly rap of a neighbor, but the measured, confident knock of someone whose time is more valuable than yours. Felix stands in the doorway when Gaius opens it, wax tablet in hand, gaze drifting over the room like an appraiser who's already decided the price. Don't flinch, Gaius commands himself. If he smells fear, he'll smell late payment. Felix smiles, the way a cat might smile at a thoughtful mouse, and says he just wants a word about the future of the building and the people who live in it. Freeze this moment as a painting. Felix in the doorway, tunic crisp, wax tablet gleaming. Gaius inside, tunic patched, bare feet dusty, a loaf cooling on the brazier behind him. It's the Roman housing market in one frame, and the frame is alarmingly flammable. Felix steps in without really asking, brushing a cobweb from the doorframe with mild distaste. He glances at the low ceiling, the sloping floor, the crack that zigzags above the window like a lightning bolt frozen in plaster. Sturdy place, he says lightly. Gaius hears the joke under the words and feels heat rise in his chest, then forces his jaw to unclench. Inside his head, the calculations start again. If he raises the rent by even 1 sestertius a week, Gaius thinks, I'll have to cut the oil, or the bread, or Marcus's piece of dried fruit on festival days. Every number leads to the same image, his family dragging their chest and mattress up to the cheaper, riskier attic rooms, or out of the insula entirely and into some worse hole. Felix explains, in the smooth tone of someone who has never hauled water up 4 flights, that a new investor is interested. Improvements may be made, he says, perhaps better stairs, perhaps repairs to the roof. He gestures vaguely upward, as though roofs are purely theoretical. Naturally, such enhancements require higher rents. Quality has its price, even when the quality is mostly on the landlord's tablet. Livia watches from the brazier, hands still, smoke curling around her like a whispered warning. She thinks, but does not say, that she would rather dodge drips than dodge eviction. Her motive is simple and fierce. Keep the boy in school, keep a door they can close, however imperfectly. Felix taps his tablet with the stylus, smiling. He assures them that reliable tenants will have priority, that nothing is decided yet, that they should simply prepare their minds. When he leaves, the room feels smaller, as if the walls have leaned in a little. Gaius stares at the crack above the window and wonders which will give way first, the ceiling or his ability to pay for it. Step out with Gaius into the street, leaving the insula looming behind like a tired giant. The sun has climbed high enough to turn the alley into a pale corridor of light and dust. Vendors shout, wheels grind over stone, a donkey snorts in protest at everything. From this angle, the building's upper stories lean toward the street, their windows gaping like uncertain teeth. Gaius's linen shop is just a short walk away, near a busier crossroads where the smells are more ambitious. Grilled meat from a food stall, perfume from a passing lady's entourage, and the ever-present undernote of sewage that no cologne has yet defeated. Bolts of cloth hang from the shop front in faded colors, fluttering just enough to catch the eye. Inside, the air is cooler, shadowed by awnings. Gaius measures fabric for a customer while listening to the real business of the city, gossip. 2 men argue about grain prices, a woman complains about her neighbor's noisy geese, and an old veteran grumbles that Insulae are nothing but death traps stacked to the sky. He tells a story of a collapse across the river, 3 floors down in an instant, families buried under their own rent receipts. Gaius pretends to focus on straight cuts and tidy folds, but every mention of falling walls echoes in his mind. If ours is next, he thinks, we'll lose everything we own in one heartbeat, and still owe rent for the month. He pictures their chest, their lamp, Marcus's scratched gladiators disappearing under brick dust. A messenger ducking rain from a leaky gutter sticks his head in briefly, shouting news. The city magistrates are discussing new safety rules for tall buildings, more inspections, stricter limits. The shop owner snorts. They'll remember for a week, he says, then forget until the next one falls. As Gaius hands over a carefully folded tunic, he realizes something uncomfortable. He fears the Insula's collapse, but he fears losing his place in it even more. And by the time he returns home, the building itself will give him a new reason to worry. By afternoon, the sun pours into the alley like hot wine, thick and relentless. The Insula's brick skin soaks up the heat, then breathes it back into every room. Picture the facade now, shutters half closed, cloths hung across windows, the occasional desperate tenant fanning themselves with a broken wicker tray. Back inside, the building hums with daytime life. A rope basket descends from the 5th floor, swaying gently. A boy down below loads it with a small parcel from the bakery and a folded note. The basket rises again, a vertical delivery service powered by childhood arms and sore shoulders. It's one of the Insula's most beloved tricks. Buy downstairs, live upstairs, climb as little as possible. In Gaius's room, Livia has pulled the mattress aside to let the floor breathe. The air smells of warm straw, sweat, and the faint sharpness of vinegar she's sprinkled to keep insects away. Marcus peers out the window, watching a passing funeral procession, black-clad mourners, pipers wailing, a wreath bobbing above the crowd. At least they get carried, he thinks, not without a child's bleak humor. Distantly, you can hear a quarrel erupt on a neighboring landing, voices rising and falling like an angry tide. Someone's laundry has dripped on someone else's food. Alliances formed around shared firewood now teeter on the edge of open war. In a place where walls are thin and tempers thinner, every drip, draft, or dropped coal is political. Livia's thoughts circle the same point all afternoon. If the rent rises, she tells herself, I can take in more mending, skip buying fish, water the wine even more. But if we're pushed out, her needle flashes in and out of a torn sleeve, the quiet rhythm a shield against panic. Down in the courtyard, Felix reappears, talking with another tenant, gesturing up toward the roof. From above, all Gaius's family can see is his small, precise figure, pointing toward the sky as if he owns even that. They don't yet know that before the day ends, the Insula will prove just how little anyone truly controls. As evening creeps in, the Insula flickers to life like a many-windowed lantern. One by one, little flames appear. Oil lamps on shelves, charcoal braziers near windows, the glow from the baker's oven downstairs swelling orange against the street. It's beautiful, if you don't think too hard about how easily beauty burns. Picture a still image of the courtyard at dusk, balconies crowded with pots, faces leaning on elbows, thin lines of smoke drifting upward and clinging to the walls. The sky above is a narrow strip of fading blue. Somewhere, a lyre is being tuned badly. Somewhere else, dice clatter on a wooden board. Livia sets a small pot over the brazier, lentils with a precious sliver of salted meat. The smell fills the room, rich and earthy. Marcus hovers, pretending not to count the pieces. Gaius returns, shoulders heavy from work and worry, and breathes in deeply. For a brief moment, he lets himself imagine that this meal, this room, this crowding, are safe and stable things. But charcoal and timber are a nervous marriage. On the floor above, an old man nods off beside his brazier, a rag hanging just a little too close to a coal. In another room, someone pours a splash of extra oil into a flickering lamp and looks away before the flame settles. Gaius knows all these habits intimately. They are the shortcuts and small risks that make life bearable and occasionally end it. He still remembers a fire from his childhood, in another Insula, another street. The roar, the choking smoke, the panic of bodies jammed in stairwells. Never again, he promised himself then. I'll keep our hearth careful, our lamp trimmed. Yet he also knows that one careless neighbor can undo a decade of caution in a heartbeat. In the corridor, a faint, unfamiliar smell begins to snake along the plaster. Hot, sharp, not quite from their own brazier. Gaius sniffs, frowns, and moves toward the door, telling himself it's nothing. After all, in a Roman apartment block, what's a little extra smoke between neighbors? Open the door with Gaius and step into the stairwell. The familiar dimness is there, but now it's tinted with a wavering orange from somewhere above. Smoke threads down the shaft like a curious spirit, thin at first, carrying the acrid scent of burning cloth. On the 5th floor, a shout cracks the usual evening noise. A woman's voice, high and panicked. Water. Fire. Doors bang open. Sandals slap stone. The building, which normally murmurs and creaks, suddenly roars with overlapping cries. If you froze it now, you'd see a jumble of bodies leaning over railings, faces lit from below by an ugly glow, mouths open in silent terror. Gaius looks up and feels his stomach drop. In the narrow slice of space above, fire is licking out from a doorway, orange tongues tasting the timber balcony rail. Bits of blackened straw drift down like dark snow. If it catches the beams, he thinks, we are all just kindling stacked neatly for the gods. Livia appears behind him, Marcus clinging to her tunic. Her eyes dart between the staircase down and their room behind. We can't leave everything, she wants to say, thinking of the chest, the lamp, the small savings hidden under the mattress. But another, louder thought pushes through. If we stay one moment too long, there'll be nothing left to own, or us to own it. Neighbors surge past, some clutching bundles, others empty-handed, faces gray with fear. An old woman staggers under the weight of a birdcage, the canary inside shrieking opinions about the situation. A man tries to push upward with a bucket, only to be shoved back by those racing down. Panic is moving faster than flame. Gaius feels the Insula's oldest trap tighten, the urge to protect possessions versus the need to survive. Behind him, their room holds every scrap of their past. Ahead, the stairs might already be turning into a chimney. And somewhere in that swirling haze, Felix's promise of improvements suddenly sounds very different indeed, as if the Insula itself has chosen its own renovation plan. For a heartbeat, everyone freezes, the most dangerous moment in any fire. Then the stairwell convulses into motion. Gaius shoves Marcus into his arms, feels the boy's ribs under his tunic, the damp heat of his panic. Whatever happens, he tells himself, I do not let go of him. Not for a chest, not for a coin, not for the past. Livia spins back into the room, moving with the brutal precision of someone who has rehearsed this in her head 100 times. She snatches the little pouch of savings from beneath the mattress, wraps it in a cloth with their small household gods, and leaves the chest, the spare tunic, the sentimental clutter of ordinary life. The brazier, still glowing, looks suddenly treacherous. She kicks Ash over it and runs. Picture the stairwell as a vertical painting now, a line of figures snaking downward, some clutching bundles, some carrying children, some carrying absolutely nothing but their own heartbeat. Smoke thickens, turning the air the color of dirty wool. Light from the upper flames pulses along the walls like some angry, living thing. Neighbors begin to find a rhythm in the chaos. On the landing below the fire, a bucket chain forms, hands grabbing, tossing, sloshing water upward. Someone hurls a wet blanket against the burning doorway, steam erupting in a hiss. It's not heroism, exactly. It's self-preservation with a side of grudging solidarity. As they descend, Gaius coughs, eyes stinging, feeling every vibration in the groaning structure. Each shudder sounds like a verdict. If it collapses, he thinks, better to be closer to the ground. Yet another thought needles him. If their room survives and they've abandoned it, will Felix count that as negligence when rent day comes? They reach the lower stories where the air is clearer, the heat less savage. Outside, the alley is filling with people craning their necks, pointing, calculating whether the flames will jump. Gaius steps out into the open, lungs dragging in cooler air, and looks up to see a sight that freezes him more than any smoke. Felix, standing calm at the edge of the crowd, watching the building like a man assessing a business opportunity. Stand with the crowd now, looking up. Flames curl from a single upper window, then two, then shrink as the frantic bucket line and a lucky shift of wind begin to win. Smoke billows out, rolling along the facade like a dark tide before thinning into streaks. The Insula groans, but it does not fall. Not today. In the alley's half-light, you can pick out faces. A girl sobbing into her apron, the old woman clutching her birdcage, a boy laughing too loudly because he's still scared. Gaius holds Marcus so tightly the child protests, then quiets, sensing the tremor in his father's arms. If we lived one floor higher, Gaius thinks, we might be watching from a very different distance. Or not watching at all. Fire-blackened water drips from balconies. Charred bits of reed mat float in the puddles like dead beetles. On the scorched floor, a family has lost almost everything. Walls still standing, possessions turned to ash. Neighbors murmur that they'll squeeze in for a few nights, share mattresses, share air. It's generosity of a sort, born less from sentiment than from the knowledge that next time, the roles could reverse. Felix steps forward, stylus poised. He surveys the damage with a furrowed brow that looks like concern until you notice his eyes, already measuring costs and opportunities. This could have been a catastrophe, he says to no one and everyone. Repairs will be needed. Perhaps it is time to reconsider how many people we allow in these upper rooms. Inside, Gaius hears the quiet subtext. Fewer tenants upstairs, higher rent downstairs, more pressure everywhere. He'll use this, Gaius thinks bitterly, to squeeze us, not to save us. Yet another part of him, ashamed, wonders if a safer building might be worth a higher price, if they can somehow cling to their place in it. As the last curls of smoke fade and the crowd begins to drift away, the Insula stands there, black-smudged and sulking, like a boxer who's taken a hard hit but refuses to leave the arena. And Felix is already drafting its next round in his mind. Night falls uneasy over the Insula. Windows glow again, but more sparsely. Some families are guests in other rooms tonight, their own spaces still warm with the memory of flame. The courtyard smells of wet ash and cabbage soup, a combination no poet has ever praised. Picture Gaius's room now, the mattress pulled close, Marcus already snoring softly, Livia darning by lamplight, her shadow tall and thin on the wall. The little pouch of savings sits between them, a modest hill of hope wrapped in cloth. Outside, muted voices rise and fall, neighbors retelling the fire with more drama and more heroes each time. A knock comes, softer than in the morning, but no less insistent. Felix again. He steps inside with the air of a man bringing bad news that he believes to be good business. He explains that the owner, shaken by the narrow escape, is indeed selling to the new investor. There will be repairs, inspections, perhaps even reinforcement of the upper floors. And naturally, he adds, rents will adjust to reflect the improved safety. The word adjust hangs in the air like smoke that refuses to clear. Gaius feels something shift inside him. All day he has been the cautious tenant, the quiet payer, the man who endures. Now, heat from somewhere deeper than the brazier flares up. If I agree, he thinks, we stay, but we starve slowly. If I refuse, we lose the walls but keep the coin. What kind of choice is that? Livia meets his eyes, needle paused. Her look says what her mouth doesn't. She cannot carry Marcus and the chest up to some faraway district and start again from nothing. Her motive crystallizes into a single line. Fight for this place, or we will be forever packing. Gaius clears his throat and, to his own surprise, asks Felix what would happen if the tenants acted together, if they insisted on limits to any increase or threatened to leave en masse. Felix's eyebrows rise, calculating. For the first time today, the balance of the conversation has shifted by a hair's breadth, and that small tilt will matter before dawn. Dawn finds the courtyard unusually full. Tenants crowd the space in wrinkled tunics and tired eyes, cups of watered wine or barley drink in hand. If you frame it as a still image, it looks almost ceremonial. Balconies lined with onlookers, the cistern at the center, Felix standing by the entrance like a reluctant officiant at a wedding he didn't plan. Word has spread that Gaius spoke up. Not loudly, not heroically, but enough. Now he stands with a few others, a baker from the first floor, the wiry woman from upstairs, the old veteran from the linen shop, forming an unlikely delegation. The Insula, usually a stack of private worries, has briefly become a single body with one uneasy voice. Felix listens, stylus hovering. The tenants argue that if rents rise too sharply, many will leave, and empty rooms do not pay well. They point to the scorched balcony above as proof that the building needs them as much as they need it. Who else will haul the water, share the bucket lines, watch for smoke? Their bargaining power is small, but it exists. Inside, Gaius is astonished at himself. I'm a man who haggles over cloth, he thinks, not over walls and lives. Yet as he speaks of Marcus needing a stable home, of Livia's work, of the crowded stairwells that are somehow family, he realizes that his fear has turned into something sturdier, a refusal to be quietly squeezed to dust. Felix, ever practical, adjusts his calculations. A compromise emerges. Repairs will be made to the worst beams, the most dangerous attic rooms closed or let more cheaply. Rents will rise, but not as steeply as planned, and long-term tenants will see smaller increases. It's not justice exactly. It's Rome. As people drift back to their rooms, the Insula seems to exhale. The cracks are still there, the stench, the noise, the daily tightrope walk of survival. But something has shifted in the way its residents see themselves, and in how Gaius will remember this day when the walls finally do, someday, come down. So how does our day in the Insula end? Not with trumpets or marble monuments, but with lentils reheated over a cautious flame and a boy scratching new gladiators into freshly swept dust. Picture the room in the soft light of late afternoon, the crack above the window unchanged, the mattress in its corner, the small pouch of savings a little safer than it felt yesterday, the lamp wick trimmed just a little shorter. Gaius sits by the window, looking out at the building across the alley, where another family is hanging laundry, swatting flies, living their own nervous peace. The air smells of smoke, stew, and humanity. We didn't win, he thinks, but we didn't lose everything either. His motive now is more than bare survival. It's to carve out a pocket of steadiness inside a city that treats ordinary lives as expendable scenery. Livia mends. Marcus pesters her with questions about the fire, about heroes, about whether their Insula is famous now. She laughs, a short, tired sound, and tells him Rome has too many near disasters to remember this one. Yet she, too, feels a quiet pride that they stayed, spoke, insisted on being more than names on Felix's tablet or numbers in some investor's calculation. If you zoom out on a map of the city, their building shrinks to a dot in a maze of streets, one Insula among hundreds. Most left no trace in stone, only in stories like this, of cramped rooms, clever tricks, shared fears, and the daily negotiations with landlords, luck, and gravity. Our sources give us emperors and battles. The tenants of Subura left us only the faint outlines of their floor plans and the soot on surviving walls. One day, Gaius's Insula will fall or be replaced, its tenants scattered like ash on the Tiber's wind. But for this one long Roman day, it stood, and so did they. And as you step back from this scene, leaving the smell of smoke and stew behind, you may find yourself eyeing your own apartment walls a little differently, listening for the quiet creaks that tell you who really lives on the edge, and how thin the line is between safety and survival in any city.